Yes.
Yes. So I want to open today with a poem, a very short but sweet poem by David White. He says,
Mm-hmm.
when your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own.
Nice.
And I,
Short and sweet.
yeah, and I felt like this spoke well to what we wanted to talk about today, uh, about burnout.
Yes. Burnout. A lot of people are going through that now, especially after the whole COVID dilemma and all. Everybody was like working from home and they thought that it was going to be relaxed and stuff, but it wasn't. Like a lot of people were overworked at home. And I think that still continues even now. So,
So what has been your experience, understanding, knowledge about this?
um, so it has, like I said, because of COVID also, I switched jobs. And the job I went to after my first one, uh, that actually caused a lot of difference in the way I was functioning. I went through burnout without realizing that I was going through burnout. I just thought that, okay, this is work and it's going to be taxing, so that's fine. But I was doing too much. There were times where I would, which never happened before, I would just skip meals. And that's not like me at all. And I wouldn't be able to sleep properly at night. I would just like keep waking up with, panic for the next day's work. Or did I finish my work? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? So that happened. And I think that's the one time that I faced the maximum burnout with any of my jobs, actually. So, yeah, that's the first time I realized that, okay, this thing happens and you can like skip meals, forget what you're doing. Like, I had the food in front of me, but I I couldn't eat. Like I was forgetting to eat because I was like busy doing something or thinking about something. So yeah, that was my version of burnout.
Yeah, that's interesting when you said that I forgot to eat food and I was not sleeping too.
Yes.
I just felt like sometimes you can also be in a flow state. That's probably not going to lead to a burnout. Uh, when you're completely invested in something that you enjoy. And then I was wondering, then how do you differentiate between being in a state of flow and how do you know that this is now? I've moved on to a stage where I'm headed towards a burnout and I'm feeling depleted.
Yeah. So I think that if I'm in a state of flow, then I don't think I'll be so panicky. I'll still be calm, you know. But in the state that I was in, which I talked about, I was panicking a lot. It wasn't just like calmness or whatever. Okay, I'm doing work, I'm enjoying it or whatever. It was panic.
Mm,
So that's what set in.
right, right. All
Yeah.
right.
Did that happen to you too? Or have you felt this?
Um, to be fair, I've never felt a burnout because I felt like there's a lot of work that I cannot handle.
Mm,
Not happened to me, touch wood so far. There have been times when I felt really tired and fatigued because I've done a lot of overtime or there just has been stressful work, but it has not taken a toll on me in the same way. I think I enjoy um, having myself completely invested in something. Um, but there are other things non-work related which have led to burnout, which is not directly related to work, maybe work environment, but not work itself. Um,
okay.
So yeah, we can get into that. But before that, I was actually thinking that, burnout is now a very common word that's used. Um, and I was very curious to understand that what burnout really is, because when you listen to the word burnout, it's like a car is um, is on is on a highway and it's run out of fuel. That's what burnout
Yes.
is like,
Yes.
right? So essentially, etymologically, burnout means your fuel is over. You've not replenished,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which led me to do some research into where did this word burnout actually come from in a psychological perspective, and what does it actually mean? And it turns out that uh, burnout was actually a word which was initially used for people in the situation of drug abuse. And
Oh,
over time, yeah. And then there was an American psychologist, Herbert Freudenberg, who used this term for people who were doing human services work, social services work, volunteer work in a free clinic for substance people who were undergoing substance abuse. And it is in that situation that he noticed that these people are undergoing there is an emotional depletion, and there is
yeah.
a loss of motivation, there's a loss of commitment towards work. And how in social services you start with an idealistic thought process that I can get this done and I want to change the world, I want to uplift the world, I want to do this and I want to do that. And gradually you are continuously meeting a wall. You're not getting the results you want, you're not getting a good feedback loop, and you're not really filling your own cup with anything. And
Okay.
that's how at least it started in the 20th century, this concept of burnout. It was primarily for doctors, nurses, social workers,
Mm.
just people doing front end work, because it was not as rewarding as doing work in any other setting. And over time, the term has expanded to include all professions, even in the
Yeah.
corporate setup, because it's increasingly seen that the expectations, the demands, physical, mental, psychological, spiritual, they're just increasing, right? And I think more
Yes.
than the emotional demand of our jobs is also quite high.
Yes.
And because you're
Yeah.
given so much time in an office environment, which is very dynamic, which is very perception driven, there is too much that you're thinking about at the same time. And just to make sure that you're meeting all standards and expectations, after a point, you don't know how to refuel yourself, or you forget to refuel yourself, which is leading to the burnout.
Yeah.
And as you keep expanding it even more, the concept can cover beyond just job related stress. It can include stress around the environment of your work, how
Mm-hmm.
back is managed, how expectations are managed, how much does the work align with who you are as a person, your personality, um, and even um, things like conflicts and perception,
Mm-hmm.
micromanagement. So these are some of the topics. More than the key task itself, it is the environment around the work which can lead to burnout. Because if you're only continuously focusing on a particular kind of work, that may not
Yeah.
do as much work, as much burnout, as much as managing expectations, managing how some people
Mm-hmm.
are perceiving you, managing office politics, the fact that you're not
Yes.
feeling okay, what people are talking about me. And in totality, the atmosphere that is created in a job or a workplace could determine, and also, of course, how much you're being rewarded for your work. Do you feel appreciated? Are you growing? Do you feel it's impactful? Do you feel it's meaningful? So that becomes your job related burnout.
Burnout. Interesting.
And then it expands further. There are mums at home who are dealing with children and also doing a job. So the
Yeah.
life is
Yeah.
stressful, but just this entire chronic
The
stress,
environment as well.
also the fact that you have a constant to do list.
Yes.
And you're probably not uh, dealing with stress in the sense that there is not like a crisis situation, but even so, you're constantly in a state of urgency. You know that your energy can constantly be used towards something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are what they call competing priorities. And when you're constantly also going through that, and you're also managing opinions and you're also managing decisions, so you undergo something called decision fatigue. Social media
Mm-hmm.
is another thing which leads to burnout because um,
Social media?
is another thing which leads to burnout because humans were not designed to process so many opinions at once. And
Yeah.
there is like an opinion overload.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get space for yourself. So how do you process? How do you refuel? How do you know what's yours and what's coming from somewhere else?
Yeah.
I think
So
now,
social media leads to burnout, but isn't also social media like a form of distraction to calm yourself down? Isn't that also how it's like?
well,
Like if you're,
I think it's still a nervous system stimulation. You're still getting overstimulated. It's still a distraction. It's not a healer. So you're
yeah,
still,
it is a distraction.
yeah, so it's not like you're actually sitting with yourself and processing what's already there. You're just giving more information to yourself. You're just giving more content to yourself, which is unfiltered, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you are, it is very important what you consume. What you eat is what you are, what you consume is what you think, and that is also who you are. It's also shaped
Yeah.
personality. Subconsciously, you are consuming so much information and opinion, and your body's processing it. And it is giving your body stress. You are in fight or flight. You just don't realize it.
Interesting. Because a lot of people usually like, if you're going through so much at work or something like that, usually distract yourself through social media. So you don't really realize, I think, that that's also adding to the burnout and stuff like that, because you think that it's a distraction.
Humans were not made to process so much information all the time.
Yeah,
This,
yeah,
this is
that's true.
like our way of dealing with it has become um, just crappier and crappier.
Yes, yes.
We're just
In
so
fact, it's funny
scared
how,
by ourselves.
yeah, it's funny how you said that. Well, it's interesting how you said that the word burnout came from what doctors were going through in clinics and stuff like that, because one of my friends is also a doctor. And she also went through something similar like that because, doctors' working hours are like 3 days, 2 days, constantly, 24 hours, 48 hours, constantly, no breaks. In fact, even in the beginning, like you were just working and there wasn't any space or any time to just sit for a bit and, rest, relax yourself. It's just constant work. In fact, she went through so much. Emotionally, physically, she actually had to be hospitalized for a bit because she was going through so much stress, so
Mm.
much hard work constantly. And it's just that's also a form of burnout, an extreme form of burnout when it leads to your physical health as well, when it damages your health as well.
Yeah,
So it's not just emotional depletion, it's also physical.
yeah, 100%. It's just your body is taking so much stress all the time by working. It's on the move.
Yes.
State of emergency has been declared chronically. You're constantly in
Yeah.
fight or flight.
Yes, but a lot of people are actually doing that. Like how you spoke about social media, people are slowly having you know, like depleting their social media usage. Like, okay, this month I will not use social media, or I will only use it like 1 hour a day. And in fact, one of my friends has just gone off of certain apps completely for years now, in fact, because it was distracting her and it was leading to extra mental stimulation, which was not required. And like distracting you from the work at hand. So it was adding to her stresses or, fatigue and all of that, even though you think that it's going to be distracting, but it wasn't and it isn't. So
No.
people are taking that choice now.
Yeah, I was off social media for a very long time, and even
Yes, I know that.
my usage is very limited. And in fact, if you are introverted, you identify that sooner than anyone else because you start to feel that their anxiety of just constantly looking at information all the time. Because introversion in totality is not being able to handle a lot of external stimulation. So you're just more sensitive to it. But the rate at which we consume, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, everyone's going to get affected by it because
Yeah.
you're just it's not just about memes and funny things and light-hearted things. It's just too much. Humans are meant to take some information from the environment and then process it and take longer to process. So if you consume 5 minutes worth of information, you need to spend 10 to 20 minutes worth of processing time.
To understand and yeah.
Really understand and see, okay, where it fits, what does it mean, where am I headed towards it. But now it's like there's just constant information, and unfortunately the social medias, we are the product of social media. Well, that is something
Yeah.
well known now, which is also why people have become conscious of how they use social media. So getting rid of so I'm selective with my I have made myself more selective with my social media. So there are certain channels and there are certain people that I follow, and I prefer to just stick
Mm-hmm.
that instead of constantly only looking at what somebody's doing in a day or what's happening, but more like, okay, this is content which is going to help me. Someone's out there trying to say something that makes sense. In fact, recently I really enjoy watching Dhruv Rathi. Dhruv Rathi is a YouTuber, and he shares really well researched information. Some of his videos are very nice. And more recently,
Mm-hmm.
he shared about voyeurism and sadism and how
Mm-hmm.
shows like Big Boss and Splitsvilla and a lot of these shows, why they attract so much attention is because one, there are sadist tendencies in all of us,
Yeah.
they sort of encash on that. And then he also introduced this word called voyeurism, which I was not aware of, which is how we take pleasure in looking at somebody else's life.
Exactly.
Which is
Yes.
why people want to see others' day-to-day life. What is their daily workout? What did they do? Where did they party? What did they eat? What did they drink? What
Yes.
are celebrities
Yes.
wearing today? So on and so forth.
Yes.
Unnecessary information.
Yeah.
And too much of it, right? It's not helping me in any way of becoming a better person. And it's
No.
a farce of inspiration in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I'm actually guilty of doing that because I also consume all this content. I like looking out and like, oh, what are you wearing? What are you doing? I like doing that. And even on YouTube, I follow people who are just sharing their daily lives because it's interesting and it calms me down, honestly. It's like it's interesting to, see, or you also feel like you're connecting with some people through that. So I don't know if it's just me or if that's how it is. But yeah, and even when you talk about Big Boss and stuff like that, I used to like watching it a lot. It was just very
Oh,
interesting and it was just mindless fun. So in a way, it used to distract me from whatever work I have, whatever issues I have. It was a way of distracting me. But yeah, you're right. Too much is not good. So even for me
yeah.
or for anybody else.
And also, if you're stressed in one portion of your life, how is getting distracted from it? You still have to come back to it, right?
Yeah,
You might
yeah.
as well use that time in finding ways
To
of
focus
doing
on
things.
that.
So, speaking neurobiologically, your body, every time you're undergoing stress, your body has a nervous system reaction. So, this is nervous system overstimulation, that your neurons are constantly going up and down to communicate information and they're going a little crazy. And this is nervous system overstimulation. And to calm it down, you need to resort to practices which bring you to your center, which calm the nervous system,
Okay.
whether it's a cold bath, whether it's a warm bath, whether it's doing thing with um, with minimal goal orientation. Or it's also something that I learned, which was very, it's around mindfulness, because I love mindfulness and I practice and I talk the most about mindfulness. So about the practice of mindfulness is about being present. So being radically accepting of what's happening in your life right now and being an honest observer of it in that moment. And that is what helps regulate your body and bring you in the control of your consciousness. So the whole idea being that having more control over your consciousness, your thought process. And if we resort to distraction, we will not be able to get those results. We're actually not having any control over our consciousness. We're kind of what's that word that they use in BPOs? Outsourcing it again.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, you take care of my problems for now. So again,
Yeah.
we're not actively using our mind into something that's enjoyable, uh, without really wanting to get something. So a mental activity which does not have to be directed towards productivity, but just focus, like a deep work. So a deep work,
Mm-hmm.
say when you take out time for deep work every day, it could be anything. If you're a content creator, it could be creating that content, doing that research. If you're an analyst, then doing your data work at that time. That is meant to recharge you, that kind of deep work. So, and it was interesting when you spoke about, how when I watch, and that could completely hold true, that in some sense, when you are watching social media, you could feel like, okay, I'm connecting with this person, I'm feeling closer to this
Yeah.
person. But in a lot of sense, you're actually disconnecting from your own self.
Yes.
So that gap,
That's true.
which is created due to stress, which is created due to burnout, burnout is basically a disconnect from your own self, from your own center, because you're in such a rush, your body is in such a rush, your cortisol and your adrenaline is so high that you've pretty much forgotten how to come back and control and how to think from your prefrontal cortex, which is your logical mind. Um,
Yeah. But I think also like why people do this is because there's probably too much going on in their own lives, which they don't want to deal with. It's a form of distraction.
yeah.
You don't want to deal with what's going on in your life and like whatever stresses you have and all of that. So you're like, okay, fine. I'll distract myself and they focus on something else, which is completely mindless, but it's distraction. And people look for that. And that's why they also watch stuff like Big Boss and all of that, because it's distracting from your own worries and your own pains.
And
So
also maybe
that's one of the other
camouflaging it,
reasons.
like camouflaging it in the sense that camouflaging the problem with another unreal problem,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which doesn't really exist, but
Unreal.
getting whatever kick or pleasure that you can out of it. But I would probably ask someone who feels that they're not comfortable sitting with their problems and need distraction, run towards the phone or run towards social media or
Mm,
such thing. I'd ask them to probably give it like 20 seconds. That maybe
okay.
in that second, just ask that, what am I really trying to escape? Or what is my real concern here? And just give yourself that gap and ask yourself, this is just one of the ways to gain control of your pausing is the only way to gain control of your consciousness. Just give yourself a
Interesting.
pause instead of making an impulse reaction that, let me calm my anxiety by just looking at the screen. Maybe
Yes.
ask myself um, that what's at stake in this moment? What am I worried is going to happen? Because that is what is actually calling out for help. And you're pushing that ball
Yes.
further down. It doesn't always have to be a difficult conversation. It doesn't always have to be just really always introspecting. Sometimes just looking at a tree or looking at the leaf is enough.
Yeah.
Doing something calming, just going for a walk. Or even if you want to consume content, consuming content which doesn't have to be intellectually stimulating, because not every time can you be in a mood to
Yeah.
consume content that's intellectually stimulating, but even listening to music that's enriching and really
Mm-hmm.
focusing on each and every word, each and every tune, each and every rhythm, the singer, the vocals, the emotion. That is also a distraction. And that's probably a better way of calming your system, because you're investing in something and you're not expecting anything out of it. It's not
Yeah.
for the sake of productivity, which is the main problem of burnout. Burnout is coming out of this whole, first it started with this idealistic movement of I want to make a change. And then it
Yeah.
went on to I want to be super productive and I want to be very goal oriented. So what if you were to put all your attention into an activity, all of it, an activity which requires all your attention, which you enjoy, and but from that you don't need to get anything productive. You're doing the activity only for the sake of doing it, like painting. For example, when a painter is painting, it's just the strokes of the brush, and it's just the focus and the rhythm and the flow that matters. He's not constantly thinking, oh, I'm going to sell it for $1 million. He'll never be able to
Yeah.
make that painting,
Yeah.
right? So just doing anything which requires all of your attention. So one of the person that always comes to my mind when I talk about, doing work just for the sake of doing that work, I don't know why. I always get A.R. Rahman in my head,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
because I've never seen his facial expression change. It always looks like he's doing music because he wants to do music, and everything else is just a byproduct of this activity that he found his flow in, that he found his focus.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Some people are very calm that way and they're very great at what they do, but it doesn't show that they're stressed or anything like that. They're calm. They're in that state where it's okay, you know, and
Because
that's
maybe they're not,
very impressive.
maybe because it's not constantly linked to an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's not constantly linked to a goal. It's just about having a consistent practice, and following the concept of Kaizen. The concept of Kaizen is uh, just steadiness, consistency, and steadiness in making small little changes every single day in the way you function. So you do the same thing, routinization of work, and you do it so much that your nervous system, your nerve cells seamlessly communicate that activity. So then normal, it's called synapses, this process of synapses where your nervous system have started communicating in a way just because of routine. So now if you start to make incremental changes in what you do, you're not going to get too
Yeah.
stressed out about it. And you're doing it in such a routine way that improvement is happening without burnout or stress.
Interesting. That's
So
a good point, actually. Yeah. I think that's something to learn. Like,
yeah,
keep doing it and like keep, like, improving on that without just going from 0 to 100 in one shot, like which will lead to burnout.
yeah,
Do it calmly, do it cautiously, carefully, all of that. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, what are some few pointers that we can keep in mind? I know you spoke about how take a 20-second break and like just do different things without like, looking into like social media or something for distraction. Sit with yourself, all of that. So, what are some other pointers that you think you can recommend to help people sit with this feeling and like not go through burnout?
Well, coming to a solution is very difficult, because for each person, that solution is going to look very different. But before that, it's maybe important to understand that what is it that's actually leading to the burnout? Is it because is it because there is a lot of work on my
Mm,
hand? Is it beyond my potential? Is there understaffing? Um, Am I worried about how I'm being perceived? Is the feedback not managed well? Is the way the feedback is given is very unproductive and hostile, and sort of threatening? Is there politics in the environment that you're in where you are constantly feeling a threat of identity? Um, or is there micromanagement where you're less concerned about the work and more concerned about being accountable?
Yeah.
Too much responsibility, but not enough power and trust, because that is one big reason for burnout. And like in some cases, like in your case, when you're, so I work with social workers. So in case of social workers, in case of doctors, there is actually a lot of physical and emotional stress
Yes, that is.
um, that they're facing because they're at the front line. So for frontline workers, it's when it's actually about the, even if it's not frontline worker, if it's actually about the magnitude of work that somebody is doing or the complexity of work that someone is doing that's leading to the burnout and the anxiety or the expectations of the work, then it has to do with finding breaks. And those breaks should not be. I remember I read Adam Grant's advice on this, saying that having more regular, shorter breaks is more powerful than having longer breaks once in a while. So having
Yeah.
a 2 weeks vacation in 3 or 4 months is not
Yeah.
as effective as having a 5 day break every month. So which is,
Oh, okay.
so they say that that is definitely good because at the, so having more frequent breaks in whatever you do and finding spaces in between is possibly
Something happened. Hello? Can you hear me?
grows up.
Yeah, okay. Now you're fine.
Yeah. So just more
Yes.
frequent breaks is one of the things which is very important. The other thing is being able to say no, being selective in the quality of the work that you're doing and quality of people that you spend time with, whether those people recharge you or drain you. And it is not something personal. It's just that with some people, you will automatically feel more recharged. And with some people, you'll feel drained. And the same people
Yeah.
uh, who drain you can be absolutely recharging to someone else, and it is not a
Mm-hmm.
personal thing towards anyone. So it's maybe about just being more selective. And one thing that I read in this book called Essentialism, which is just an amazing book. I think everyone who's going through burnout, I would 100% recommend this book. It says if it's not 100% yes, it's a no. If
Okay.
a particular activity, if you're going to buy something, if you're going to a social event, if there is a friend, even if it's about picking up the phone, if you really, really, really don't want it, it's a no.
Yeah.
Don't
I
buy
know.
it. So
Interesting.
essentialism is uh, a sub um, is a subcategory of minimalism. So essentialism is all about doing less. And
Yeah.
it has an interesting concept of how you can actually get more by removing rather than by adding. So in your calendar, have a look at your calendar and look at things which are unnecessary. And I'm not just talking
Not that
about,
important. Yeah.
not even the work calendar, I'm talking about your
Yeah.
life's calendar.
Life. Yeah.
Just look at parts which are not important. And even if it seems kind of relaxing, it's probably not. So say you're spending 1 hour on scrolling Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
always come up with an activity which is more recharging and rewarding. And then the other, so there are two more things which come to my mind. One is when you're trying to, so a lot of people who go through burnout, the next thing that they hear about is self-care.
Yes.
Another buzzword, right?
Yeah.
But what happens with self-care is, okay, um, I'm not going to do this job, or I'm not going to take care of this family or whatever. And I'm going to prioritize myself, which means I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to do this exercise. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to meditate. And then you replace one set of priorities with another set.
With another set, yes.
Yeah, so you're pretty much putting yourself on a hamster wheel where you may probably just repeat the pattern of burnout and thinking that, hey, what was I here for? So a lot of people have seen that the second they go out of the zone of, okay, fine, now I have time, I'm going to put that entire, if I've got 1 hour spare, I'm going to
Yeah,
take
into
1 hour
something
and put
else.
it in the gym.
Yeah,
And that's it.
yeah,
And that's absolutely it. That's where your gymming is not going to happen and your work's not going to happen and you're going to end up feeling shittier about yourself. So every
yeah,
time you feel like this is something I should do, this is a should do, you have to, then it's time to sit and analyze that, okay, why is it a should do? And what is the want to do instead? And say, like someone says, okay, I should go to the gym in my spare time, but I want to look at social media in my spare time,
mm-hmm,
then that's an inquiry. Then
yeah,
you want to go into, okay, what need of mine is being met by doing either?
yes. That's a good point.
And now, if so, by looking at social media, what I really want is some release, some ease. And if I go to the gym, what I'm really meeting is my value for good health and discipline.
Yeah,
Now, how can you make the two come together? Go for a walk, do something simple but rewarding. I mean,
mhm,
this is just one of the 100 examples.
yeah.
Do
Or
some
you can also like go to the gym, be on the treadmill while maybe watching something on your phone. So you're sort of doing both, relaxing and working out and all of that. No?
I don't think you are either meeting discipline or ease, but that's how
Mm,
I look at it. It could be different for different people. I would not feel, I don't think multitasking can ever be something that eases anyone else out because you're
okay.
doing multiple things at the same time.
Mm-hmm,
So you're multi-focusing. So our brain is not made to focus on more than one thing at a time.
mm-hmm.
That's not how you can relax.
So the whole multitask thing doesn't work
You could
because
multitask,
everybody talks about that.
you can't multi-focus.
Okay.
So multitasking is not a very I'd say it's a very archaic and obsolete concept. It doesn't belong to humans at all. I don't think it belongs to any species. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
corporate and crony. It's something that comes from crony
It
capital.
is. Yes.
Um, Instead, try doing something which requires your focus, but make sure it's something interesting. So, for example, if someone's not a reader, I'm going to hand them a book and say that, hey, read for an hour and see how relaxing it is. He's like, no, I'm going to get really bored with it. Don't do
Yeah, exactly.
don't do that. It could be something you have to find that for yourself, and everyone's gonna have. For me, a walk works wonders because that's the time when I'm just looking at the sky and the trees and all of that. But I'd still recommend pick up one thing. Don't do both. Pick up
What
one
if somebody
activity
says,
where both of these. So, for example, if somebody likes, say everything that's peppy, like what's happening in Instagram and it's distracting, but also what's
yeah,
fit, go for a dance class and make a video.
mm, nice. What
And
if somebody says, watching TV is relaxing for me? Does that work? Watching TV or just scrolling through social media, it's relaxing, you know? Some people do say that.
yeah, and it is a release, right? Because in that moment, you're not constantly having to deal. But there is a part that's also saying that I want to also be fit. And that's not coming from I should be fit. That's coming from I want to fit. I want to be fit. And from that, I want to be fit is coming because I want to be fit, I should go to the gym. So you need to wait for some wants to come that come from your previous wants rather than it coming from a should. Because every time there is a should, you
Interesting.
are giving invitation to more burnout.
Interesting. I want to stay fit, so I need to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I want to be
Interesting.
relaxed, so I want to watch TV.
Nice. That's a good way to put it. I think I learned a lot. There are so many things that you like showed me about the whole 20-second, 30-second rule. Then the wants versus, needs and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned a lot from this.
There's actually one more thing that actually leads to a lot of burnout, which people can probably be wary of. And all of this actually applies to me also. I also need to constantly be conscious and think about it, is sunk cost bias. So because a lot of times people continue doing certain things because they've already been doing it for a long time. So they feel that
Yeah,
there's an investment that has gone into it. So if I stop doing it now, it's going to be a loss. But
loss. Yeah,
if it's going to keep you in a burnout state, you're actually in a loss already. And you're just going to increase that dent.
increase that.
But you can minimize your losses by stopping that activity at that time. So, for example, you're doing an activity. Say, okay, for me, it was running. I started running and I ran for like 3 years and I felt amazing and everything was great. And then gradually I started to get very, very stressed out. Like I knew I was completely stressed out by running. It was a very stressful activity for me. It was very difficult for
Mm-hmm.
me to come to terms with it because I found my identity there a little bit, and not completely, but a little bit. I started to identify myself like that. Um, but it took me a long time to realize that by holding on to that sunk cost bias, um, I'm creating more losses, because I'm
Okay.
onto that identity, because of which I'm not doing anything else, because of which I'm not ready to be more gentle with myself. So I'm constantly putting myself up for that standard that I can only do this or nothing else. So it's actually leading to more loss than I'm actually just increasing my loss. So for me to come to terms with the fact that it is stressing me out and I need to do something which meets both my needs to be fit and also have ease, was a way to actually reduce my losses or stop going into a continuous losses kind of a phase. So yeah,
Interesting.
please. What about you? What comes into your mind when you think about um how to cope with burnout?
So that's the thing. When I focus on coping with burnout, I usually push myself to another distraction. I
Mm.
don't really sit with it, like you said, like, meditate or go for a walk and stuff like that. I just like distract myself. I watch something, I go on social media, I do all of that. But maybe I need to think more about how that's, going to improve my own self rather than just distracting myself by focusing on something else. So yeah, I need to sit
Also
sit
maybe
with it.
also yeah, maybe don't have to again be so harsh on yourself and say that, oh no, I can't do this. Even I look
Yeah.
here when I feel like, oh God, I've had a day. I'll just like
Yeah.
do some mindless scrolling. Because there is something about it which does make you feel like, okay, fine, I'll just laugh. I'll just make fun of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I do get a little bit of sadistic pleasure. There's no lying. Okay. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you're just looking at something, you're like, oh God, what is this person doing? And you
Yeah.
get,
Oh my God, always.
yeah. I probably asked myself in that moment that, um, what is my fear in this moment? And a lot of times, for me at least, the answer is often that I'm either too passionate about something or I'm trying to push myself to do something that I don't really want to do.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, basically, yeah, the burnout phase has always led to. And also another thing that happens is if I'm too focused on something, I get anxiety. I feel stressed and I
Mm.
want to distract myself from it. So I do that by doing something completely mindless. And then I don't, like, I miss out on doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I get even more stressed and I distract myself more. So that is another thing that I need to work on.
Yeah. Okay, so just for the sake of keeping this discussion neutral and covering all bases, how tell me quite honestly, when you do distract yourself, and there are times when social media or looking or just engaging in any kind of distraction, it relaxes you. Um, what are the positive outcomes of that distraction?
Positive outcomes, I don't see any. The only thing that I see is the distraction. That okay, fine, I'm not stressed about my job or whatever. That's the only thing that I can see because other than that, there's no positive outcomes. Like I'm not getting the task at hand done. I'm
But if
just
you're saying
distracting
that
myself
in
from
that
it.
moment, you don't feel stressed out about your job,
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
so there is something there, right? So
Mm. But
the
only for that moment, not for the long term.
yeah, but in that moment also, what is helping you keep the stress at bay? Yes, there is
Like
distraction.
this. Yeah,
So
distraction.
having something to think about, keeping yourself occupied with something else. That's what distraction is
Mm.
about. So it's, and how does that help you when you come back to it?
Come back to.
So supposing you have a train of thought which is stressful,
Yeah.
break that train of thought by occupying your mind with something else. And then when you come back to that original task, how do you feel?
Sometimes I feel a little more stressed because I haven't done it yet. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, okay, fine, I've calmed myself down, so I can do this. But a lot of times I feel more stressed because I'm distracting myself from that and I've not done the thing that I'm supposed to be doing.
And what is
So
it that
yeah.
maybe, there's something to think about, that what is it that you can do that does occupy your mind with something else, that does relaxes you, takes you off away from the stress for some time, but in a way that feeds back to what you actually want to do. This is what happens with a lot with holidays and vacations. That you probably have a very stressful year, and at the end of the year you go
Yeah.
crazy 4 week vacation, then you come back and you're repeating the same cycle. But what is a way that you can make the way you function um, more balanced, where there don't have to be constant peaks and ebbs, but the way you're doing that work is done in a way where you get enough breathers,
Hmm.
don't have to go through these phase of compression and expansion, compression and expansion. You see, there is a kind of, it seems like we're yo-yoing in an extreme state instead of being in what is termed as equanimity in Gita. It's like a state of balance, like we're doing our work and then we take a break and then we come back to our work and then we take a break.
Yeah.
That break is such that it recharges us. So, what is a way to do that? And that is probably different for each person.
Yeah. For me also, um, reading is one, listening to a podcast is another, just listening to music is another. Not too much of TV. And if I do focus on TV only, then maybe like just a 20-minute, 30-minute show and then that's it. And that's still calming. Like
Yeah.
as long as I don't allow myself to get completely distracted for a long time, it's fine. Like I have the ability to come back to the task at hand. So just short periods of distraction is okay.
Yeah.
But the thing is, sometimes what happens is I get so sucked into my distraction
Mm.
that again that hampers my coming back to what I'm actually supposed to be doing. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. If it's a short time, it's okay. But if I distract myself too much, then I forget what I'm doing and I can't go back to it without feeling even more stressed that oh my God, I've not done this. So
That,
short bursts is okay.
that I think reinforces what Adam Grant said about breaks. Um,
Yeah.
so they say you concentrate for 40 minutes and take a 5 minute break. Then you concentrate for another 40 minutes and you take a 5 minute break. And
Yes.
a
Short
five,
breaks.
yeah, and a 5 minute break. Also, this is my own observation. This is not something I've read or heard from anyone else, but this is something I drew from my own life experience, that, when you spoke about things that help you relax, you spoke about reading, you spoke about listening to a podcast, listening to music, you said
Yeah.
not so much. And one thing, and that's one my conclusion is that when you do something in which only one of your senses is being connected to the brain, you'll feel more relaxed. So, for example, you're listening to a podcast, it's only your ears which are being used, and all your
Yeah.
energy is going in one direction, which is to the process of listening. So, there is more refinement
Yes.
and more concentration and focus in that. So, it's more relaxing. But audio visual is where your eyes and your ears, they're both in,
Yeah.
and it's probably not as relaxing as reading or listening to a
Yeah.
podcast or music.
Yeah. So use one sense basically at a time, not
That's
all your
I've never
senses.
read it. I've not read a research on it as yet, but this works for me. This is something
Hmm.
from my own. This is something I drew from my own experience. That if I just use one sense, I feel better. So if I'm just
Yeah.
at one point, I'd listen to music while doing anything and everything, but now
Hmm.
I don't. So even things like taking a warm bath, where just that one sense of skin is of sensation is activated. So you get a chance. So which is why they say when you're eating, focus on eating only.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. But that is something that I never did. Ever since a child, I used to read while eating. Even now, I sometimes read while eating. So that's something that I don't do. I don't just focus on my taste. I also focus on visual. So, or you watch TV while eating.
Yeah.
So that's something else. I
But
just
I
can't
have
sit and eat.
noticed that I don't enjoy my food as much. Now when I'm in office, no matter how busy my day is, I take my 40-minute lunch break or 45-minute lunch,
Yeah.
and I make sure that I take something for lunch that's not just healthy, but it's something I'm really going to enjoy eating, and I take my sweet time in eating it. I
Yeah.
really make sure that I remember every bite that I take, because that helps
Yeah.
me cut off from my work in that moment and feel more recharged when I go back to my desk.
Nice. Does it lead to boredom, do you think, while you're sitting with your food?
I don't get bored. I get more
Yeah.
bored if I don't get that space. Like if I have to have a
Okay.
conversation while eating, which is a
Yeah.
conversation. Like I prefer using one sense at a time. Otherwise, I get a little overstimulated. But again, that's different for different people. And that's why there's no one answer, except that no
But do
one,
whatever helps.
yeah, do whatever helps and keep asking yourself the question, okay, what is it that's
Of what helps.
met?
Yeah.
And what need is being met? So, for example, there are times if I'm just looking at social media, I can ask myself that, okay, what is it that I'm really wanting? Is there some
Hmm.
information that I'm looking for? Is there something at particular? Am I looking for laughter? And am I just actually just doing this so that I don't have to do something else? So I can just avoid doing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or for me, a lot of times the reason is if I don't have a plan, that's when I'll resort to random activities. But if
Hmm.
I know that this is what I'm meant to do, so this is where having a routine is helpful. So if I know that after I come back from office at this time, from 6 to 7 is time for this, from 7 to 9 is time for this, I'm not going to have that time for social media, and my day is more laid out for me. And because I'll have that routine, I'll not, my body will be hardwired to go and do that if I keep doing it consistently. And so I'll automatically be more focused because I'm not losing my mental energy in deciding what to do. That's another reason for
Hmm.
burnout, not having a routine. So spending too much time thinking, what do I have to wear? And
Yeah.
what time do I have to leave? And what do I have to cook? So this is why routinization of tasks,
Pre-plan, basically.
just routinization, just like I don't have a lot of clothes. I don't keep a lot of clothes anymore. So I have 7, 8, 10 sets at max. And I
Yeah.
just
A lot of people do that
yeah.
nowadays.
So I don't have to
A
think
lot of people.
about what I have to wear, how is this fitting, am I looking good? I don't care about that. I have a certain way of
Yeah.
keeping my hair, I have a certain way of looking at all times. So I don't have to care
Yeah.
about looking. I don't care about having variety.
Yeah.
In my food, I try to routinize and have the same thing every day and repeat the same activity every day, not only because it's healthy, it actually frees up so much mental space from other things.
Yeah,
Having food at the
yeah,
same time every day.
yeah.
Uh,
Steve Jobs used to do that, you know. He used
yeah,
to wear the same thing every day. So
not
then he
that
doesn't have
level.
to think.
I'm not that
Yeah.
level, but yeah, like not like okay.
Reduce. Yeah,
It's also easier to clean, repeat, and manage that stuff. And if you want to buy new stuff, get rid of the old stuff first, and then you can get a new design if you want. And um, just routinize. These
yeah.
are things that you can try to gradually adopt in our life, because just we have just too much access to information, material
We do.
things, activities.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. So, yeah,
Mm.
I think this was really helpful because I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
everybody. Actually, I think everybody learned a lot through this. What to do and how to reduce your overstimulation, basically. So, yes, thank you. This was a great podcast.
Yes. Great talking to you.
Same here as always.
Yes.
Perfect. So, we'll come back next week for the next. I'm sorry that this particular podcast took so long, but we've both been busy, we've both been sick. A lot of stuff has been happening. But yes, next time we will come back within a week.
Yes. 100.
Yes, 100%. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.